We've been taught to push through pain, sacrifice our health for our ambitions, and be grateful we even get to compete. But what if I told you this narrative is holding back women from their full potential as athletes? Today, I'm speaking with Mel Sulaver, based in Michigan, a registered dietitian who understands firsthand the cost of poor nutrition advice in sports. After experiencing an eating disorder herself as a collegiate athlete, she now helps women rebuild their relationship with food, performance, motherhood, their multiple identities, and their bodies. By the end of the episode, you'll understand why that shower shake might be the most important performance hack in your arsenal, how to tell if your normal cycle is actually normal for you, and whether it's holding you back from more, higher, better, stronger performances. Why carbs aren't optional for female athletes. I repeat, carbs are not optional, despite what keto influencers claim. And the truth about energy needs when you're breastfeeding. Spoiler, it's way more than during pregnancy. We're keeping it real in this conversation when talking about women's bodies. No proprietary blends, no pseudoscience, no shoulding all over yourself. Just practical wisdom that works for real athletes living in real bodies. Ready to get curious instead of judgmental about your health? Let's dive in. Okay, Mel Sulaver, we are so excited to have you on today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me here. We'll have fun today.
Yes, it will. It'll be a great conversation. We've been having a lot of conversations lately in the community, just talking about menstrual health, nutrition. You have a really great combo. So I guess to get us started, tell us a little bit about what got you interested in kind of menstrual health and hormonal functioning for female athletes and active folks from that nutrition lens.
Sure. So obviously I'm a registered dietitian by profession, but I am still an athlete. If I were to go through my identifiers, I would say I am a mother, I am a wife, a small business owner, registered dietitian, athlete falls within that category. And I find those identifiers shift at any given point in time. And as a collegiate athlete, there were so many things that we didn't know about performance, about nutrition, about what it means to optimize performance through nutrition. So as I was studying nutrition and dietetics in college, I was always interested in sports performance. And I ended up with an eating disorder, as unfortunately many do. That was triggered by my college coach. And so much of my early professional career had to do with the prevention of eating disorders in sport, disorders eating in sport. And at that time, we had what was the female athlete triad. We did not have relative energy deficiency in sport at that point. And we do now. And so I kind of naturally found my way into kind of the combination of how do we best support the female body as in our baseline physiology, and in turn, what does it look like to optimize performance? Because we can't do one without the other. We can't just talk about the sexy, fun sports performance piece and not take care of our body as a whole. And our menstrual health and function is such an intimate part of that.
Yeah, I say that all the time, as a sports psychologist from the mental health lens. It's like you can only get so far. Your performance will last a short time and then it catches up to you. Right. And I think it's got to be similar with nutrition and kind of medical and physiological circles. Right?
It is. And it's sports nutrition is such a unique component of nutrition as a whole. And you could say that about anything when it comes to nutrition, because you have more medical nutrition therapy, and then you have niches within that, right? You have chronic conditions, you have diabetes, you have cardiovascular disease, you have chronic kidney disease. And then you get into sports performance or you get into pediatrics. There's different subsets of what really requires a lot of expertise. And fortunately, or unfortunately, I guess you can say, everybody eats. But the unfortunate part to that is because everybody eats, everybody has an opinion about how other people should eat. And
yes.
It makes being a registered dietitian and registered sports dietitian interesting because there's a lot of voices out there telling people what they, air quotes, should do. And a lot of that information is dangerous, inappropriate, and unsupported by evidence or what might be best for someone's body.
Yeah. Do you actually have some examples of kind of some of that, what you hear most often?
Oh, do I?
Um, like leaning in, like, let me get started. I mean, especially just traditional nutrition and training protocols where you're like, yeah, we need to stop that.
So the first thing is anything low carb when it comes to athletics.
Yeah.
Carbohydrates are our main source of fuel. For female athletes in particular, when we think about menstrual function and hormonal functioning, we need a baseline amount of carbohydrates to support that. And so anytime I have seen a female athlete at any point in their lifelong journey go on a lower carb diet, there ends up being some sort of endocrine disruption. Sometimes it manifests as a clinical diagnosis, like a hypothyroidism. Other times we'll see what is relative energy deficiency in sport, lower energy availability pieces, low carbohydrate availability, most obviously. But it is unsupportive of our body to follow a low carbohydrate diet if you are an athlete. It's not going to help you. The other big one, and this is definitely trending, if you will, as a controversial point, is fasting. The reason why I would say fasting is not supportive for us as female athletes is because if you are active or identify as an athlete, meaning you are training intentionally 4 or more days a week, you're following specific programming, you're training for a specific type of sport, it is likely your energy availability needs are pretty high. And so it is easier for you to dig yourself into an energy deficit. And if we are fasting, be it if you're following a fast mimicking protocol, like you're only eating in an 8-hour eating window, one of those type of things, or you're just skipping breakfasts, or you're someone who's like, it doesn't feel great when I eat before I train, so I'm just not going to eat till noon. Yeah. Now we're just going long periods of time without eating. It is more likely that we end up in a larger calorie deficit. And the way I would encourage everybody to think about it is not just in the 24-hour window. So if you're someone who pays attention to your macros or you log your intake, this extends far beyond a 24-hour period. Think about, let's take a collegiate athlete, for example, right? So you have 1 or 2 a days, kind of like going through your season. If you have a lift and then you have a practice, or we think about heading into tournaments or meets or things along these lines, between Monday and Friday or Monday and Saturday, if you've fasted for a number of those sessions, you're going to be tanked by the time Friday gets around. So fasting is just one of those things where there's not going to be much of a benefit. And if you notice that you're having some level of GI distress before you train when you eat something, then we need to work on training your gut. And we're capable of doing that. So those would be the 2 big ones that flag immediately as there's no reason for us to do this.
Yeah, this is super helpful. I think, intermittent fasting is, it's all over. But as you noted, everyone has an opinion. Oh, yeah. And I think there's a lot of like, well, it's worked for me.
Correct.
So what are some of the things, people may feel that it is working for them. That said, what are some of the, what is true hormonal health and like a healthy or quote unquote normal menstrual cycle? Like what is considered normal and what are you typically looking for when working with athletes who menstruate?
Sure. So normal is such a relative term, to be honest, Erin. But I would say a normal cycle would just mean to me that you're bleeding. Bleeding happens. But as we know, if you're taking an oral contraceptive pill and you're experiencing a withdrawal bleed, that's not the same thing as if you are not on contraceptives. So I would say a healthy cycle reflects 3 things. It's going to reflect energy availability. So we're in a state of energy availability, endocrine stability. So your body is doing the things that it is supposed to be doing. And then resilience under training stress. So no matter if you're in a season of higher training, you're building up towards an event, you're in your off season, no matter what you're throwing at your body, you're recovering while strong.
You bounce back.
Exactly. So those would be 3 things I would heavily consider. And then if we think about maybe some key markers that we'd want to pay attention to for what is a healthy cycle, talking about the menstrual cycle in general, most things are based off of a 28-day cycle, but that might not be normal for you. It's sure not normal for me. I encourage people to understand what is your normal. So if a normal cycle is anywhere from 21 to 35 days, your normal might be 28 to 30 days. My normal might be 22 to 24 days. if my normal is 22 to 24 days and I start having 35-day cycles, something's probably wrong. So it's
That makes
important
sense.
to spend time with your body and understand what is normal for your body. Um, the other component of this would be ovulation. So there's markers for ovulation we can look for in terms of your cervical mucus. I think that's an easier one if you're paying
Yeah.
attention to the discharge that you're experiencing throughout the course of your
Mhm.
cycle. If you are exploring in a season of your life what it would look like to get pregnant, you are probably paying a hyper focused
Mhm.
to this. There's some different
Mhm.
testing strips that you could use for things along those lines. But ovulation is critical for a healthier cycle. Um, Understanding your menstrual cycle in general, one of the things you could also look at is the length in different phases. So your luteal
Mhm.
phase versus your follicular phase versus, how many days
Yeah.
you are experiencing a bleed. And we know that it's important in particular to have an adequate luteal phase. So kind of that
Mhm.
backside of our cycle length, because that is where we
Mhm.
look at our bone density, we look at our metabolism, our mood. So there's components of this that just understanding what's normal in your body will be valuable. And there's different ways that we can do that. So you could track it manually on a calendar. There are a number of different
Mhm.
apps you can utilize. Within my pregnant postpartum populations, especially my postpartum athletes, I've been utilizing some of the newer technology that has come out in terms of the hormone trackers, where they're assessing more than just LH or luteinizing hormone and ovulation. They're kind of I have my athletes utilize this every day throughout their cycle so we can
Yeah.
see what's going on. Um, it's been awesome because a lot of
Mhm.
especially I would say my professional athletes or more competitive athletes who, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but a lot of this
Mhm.
is kind of coinciding with when they're full on in their careers. And so they have a
Yep.
baby, they're immediately getting back into high levels of training. And then maybe they're looking to have another baby. And so one
Right.
of the things that might happen, I'm going a little bit off track here, but one of the things that might
It's
happen,
okay. It's great.
yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
so you might not actually get a period back postpartum. There is not a clear
Right.
marker of some people get it back at 6 weeks, some people get it back at
Mhm.
18 months. There's such a variability there. So if we utilize a tool like this where we can actually see what's happening, if you are ovulating and just not bleeding, you can still
Yeah.
have a healthy pregnancy. And so that's also been a helpful tool for us. But
That's really
ultimately,
cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
these markers all involved paying attention to your body. It does require patience if you've never done it before, because we need a couple
Yeah.
months worth of information. 1 month isn't going to cut it. I'm looking at 3 to 6
Mhm.
months of what's happening as life is moving for you, as
Yep.
it's changing and flowing and things happen. What is kind of your normal and how are things netting out? And then we can better assess where we need to intervene to better support you.
Yeah. That makes sense. And so for the folks who are listening who are interested in tracking, if they don't yet do
Mm.
it, it sounds like, days of bleeding, the nature of the bleed or how heavy it might
Yep.
be, I imagine. Cervical mucus, if that's something they are paying attention to, that could be a good sign
Hmm.
of ovulation. Is that safe to say?
Yes. And again,
Okay.
that think about it as cycle stability over under your training load.
Yep.
So you're not losing
Yeah.
your cycle under periods of higher training or higher volume or higher intensity. But yes, that bleeding alone cannot be our only marker of what
Right.
is healthy.
Yeah. Any other like physiological, signs or signals that are often overlooked? So I know there's a lot of talk about heart rate variability,
Hmm.
sleep, um, inflammation, achiness, other kind of signs or symptoms that you've noticed.
Definitely. That would just clarifying that would contribute to really like a potential for concerns or low energy availability we're talking about now.
Yeah, just like that, a sign that like, okay, maybe the menstrual cycle is not as stable as we would like right now. Like something might be up.
Yes. And I think you make a good point there too, honestly, Erin, because our menstrual health is only one output itself of a much broader system.
Right.
So yes, resting heart rate and heart rate variability. So your resting heart rate might decrease where your heart rate variability would go up. If you're someone,
Mm,
again, if you're a data person and you're wearing an Apple Watch or a Garmin or some sort of tech, could be
mm,
an Oura Ring or a Whoop, you're going to
yep.
have all that information and that's where you would see it. I've also had a number of people find out they were pregnant by us saying, wait a second, like this This is off. I am now pregnant.
Something's different. Like,
Not always planned
it's
either.
wild.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but if you
Yeah.
know, but it's really powerful to know
Yeah.
what is normal for your body and immediately
What's your
flag,
normal?
yes, something is wrong, something is off, or something is just different, and then be able to get curious about it. So I want to preface this for all of you listening that the messaging here is I want you to be curious about your body. There's no judgment. There is no shame. We are just being curious because in being curious, we can collect information and then in turn be able to make informed decisions about what we want to do next, which I think is
That's my favorite phrase. I tell my clients this all the time is stay curious.
yes.
Because then you're not hopping to judgment and like this good or bad, or I should, or I shouldn't, or it, it's supposed to be, like, no, like just collect information first and then you can play detective and figure out what you want to do with it. Right.
Yeah.
Um,
I thoroughly agree. I'm a big, very talk therapy style in nature of how I counsel, and I'm a big no shoulds. Like we are not going to should ourselves into doing anything. Like just very conscious of the language and how we speak about ourselves, and that's very powerful. So, jumping in kind of back to some of the overlooked signals, we said the changing your resting heart rate to be lower, heart rate variability shifting up, your sleep quality and like frequent wake ups could be part of that. It could be an intolerance to the cold. And some of this is going to overlap with, again, your menstrual health, your physiology, and kind of get into that lower energy availability red flags for us. Mood, anxiety, irritability, not just PMS. Again, extreme shifts in how you would respond. Now, again, if you are postpartum in particular, that might be even more intense. So same thing, recognizing what is your normal, or common for you even, and how is that changing? And is there a trend to it? I think being able to identify trends is incredibly valuable as well. Digestive changes, injury frequency and recovery time. So we'll see a combination of things that are specific to your baseline physiology, and then we'll also see it show up in your training and your performance as well.
That makes sense. Yeah. So then I have so many questions. I want to go in a million directions.
I'm going to blow my nose while you
one of them I'm going to put a pin in, which is just like a selfish Erin question, is like, how can I build the most robust, resilient menstrual cycle possible so that it like doesn't, it's not as jolted or phased by what I'm putting my body through. So like, that's a big one. I'll just let you pick the direction that we go in. The other question I'm having is, okay, so we are, we have all of this really great data, and then we have the sports world that we're in, and then we have sports science, which is predominantly on men and male athletes. So like, how do those things intersect when it comes to women and folks trying to get pregnant and motherhood and balancing peak performance and menstrual health? So you get to pick the direction that you go in, and it might be both.
I think we do both. There's so much in there.
Right?
Well, let's talk about the resiliency to your cycle. And I know offline we had talked about like, what would this look like at different points? So I'm going to touch on that. So if we think about through our life, through female life, what does this look like? So if you're in your adolescence or you have an adolescent child in particular, because I think a lot of our listeners are probably going to have kids who are in this category, and how do we support them in their bodies? So if we think about adolescence, those teenage years in particular, we know that cycle irregularity could reflect the underfueling. And also, unfortunately, within the medical system, that might be normalized. But it is never normal. It might be a common experience. It is never normal. So know that if you are advocating for this person or if you're advocating for yourself. But ultimately, the thing that we'd want to focus on would be your fueling. Like truly your fueling. So there's a lot of discussion. Again, this kind of falls into that influence category. There's a lot of discussion around cycle syncing, if you will, which doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything.
It's like, what does that mean actually?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Because
it's a trendy phrase. Is what it is.
It's sexy, so it sounds, and yet it's the unsexy, basic I'm going to quote Dr. Christina Previtt. A shout out to her. She's a great pelvic health
Well,
human being.
awesome.
She talked about low key consistency. So low key consistency across the board. That's what we need to be focused on. The basics, those low hanging fruit, over and over and over again. Anytime it is being packaged really beautifully into a step by step like this at this specific time, without anybody assessing you and knowing, going back to what we first discussed about what is normal for your body, it doesn't mean anything. So the reason we talk about eating enough and supporting baseline energy needs is because you have to be eating enough for you to be able to do any of the other fun stuff, like play around with supplementation, like play around with, more carbohydrates, maybe like a little bit more fat at a different time in your cycle versus keeping your protein consistent. None of that matters if you're underfueled. And so
if you're not getting enough in the first place.
Correct. Yeah. So I would just focus on prioritizing your meals throughout the course of the day. And that could look like 3 meals a day and snacks. It could look like 4 or 5 meals a day, depending on what your flow looks like. The idea is to break up, to have regular eating intervals. I would say every 3 to 4 hours, like make sure you're having a well-rounded meal that includes some starchy bread, rice, pasta, potato, plantain-based carbohydrate in addition to protein. Protein's getting a lot of love right now, as it needs to, but as a female athlete, your priority is carbohydrates. Especially
like don't leave the carbs behind.
Correct.
Yeah.
Especially if we're talking about adolescence, and if we're talking about now, if we enter into this pregnancy kind of fertility component, we also need to be focused on carbohydrates. They're so important within the context of energy, within the context of, again, a regular cycle. When you actually get pregnant, they can help a lot in terms of mitigating nausea. I can't tell you how many people, if we just kind of have a regular carbohydrate consumption, we can really help support that, what I like to call the humming, kind of like meditative gray cloud that you might navigate in your first trimester plus. If you're lucky, consistent carbohydrate intake can make a really big difference there. So from a fueling standpoint, that's what we're looking at. Thinking through pregnancy, postpartum, what you'll notice there would be, again, energy demand spikes and expectations that recovery duration needs to be specific to you and what you're dealing with. So again, that's just going to be a unique experience for everybody. Now, if we think about the latter half of our lifestyle phase, so you get into perimenopause, this is where protein's going to take a bit more of a forefront. So of course we need to continue to prioritize carbohydrates, but we also want to make sure we're really prioritizing that protein intake with each meal. As always, what is most important is by the end of the day or by the end of the week, again, we're kind of net positive for our consumption based on the things that we're asking of our body. But speaking to menstrual health there as well, what you might notice is, your cycles may be present, they'll be changing because, again, there's a lot happening hormonally. So your symptoms are going to matter more than your bleed timing in perimenopause. I want you to pay attention to your symptoms because that's what we want to be able to address. It's going to be harder to find what is normal because it's going to be constantly changing until you stop bleeding entirely.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. What are some, like if you think about some of the strategies that have been practical for women who are trying to, like eating more regularly? I know people have been talking more, social media and the latest and greatest about just timing when it comes to nutrition. It's like, it's not just about the macros, like think about the timing. So what are some of the go-to strategies that you kind of start with for folks who are like, okay, I want to start prioritizing my nutrition again?
So one of them we mentioned is don't fast, because it's an easy window for us to get in. Again, it doesn't have to be even a full meal. It's just, it could be a snack. It could be a bowl of cereal, a banana with a milk of your choosing, or, it could be right after your workout, really prioritizing that protein shake. We love a shower shake over here, like blend up your.
Oh, I've done that. Yes.
I all the time, especially when you have small humans. It's like, okay, I need to give you a boob in 5 minutes. So let me just get this down. So
I need that.
Just one-handed.
Yep.
Um, I'm looking at 3 to 6 months of what's happening as life is moving for you, as
Yep.
it's changing and flowing and things happen. What is kind of your normal and how are things netting out? And then we can better assess where we need to intervene to better support you. It'll buy you half an hour, and then you can
Yes.
get a meal in. So don't sit
Yeah.
on the shower shake. Don't sit on that pre-training snack meal. And when you're able to have a meal, again, I think planning is invaluable. So
Yeah.
depending on the person, I think some people have more flexibility within their schedule, or I find, especially for people who are caregivers, whether you're caregiving for children or you're caregiving for older adults, a lot of us are doing both at the same time right now.
Yep.
So,
Mhm.
if you know what that looks like, when those hours are, but you're also working, say Monday through Friday, it might be easier for you to plan, block your meal time the same way you block your workout, the same way you block the meeting. Put it in your calendar.
Yeah.
And it can be 15
Yeah.
minutes. It doesn't have to be a
Mhm.
full hour. And then that's where you could think about from the food itself. Is it, do you take 2 days a week to meal prep? Similarly, meal prep can take 3 hours. It can also take 30
Mhm.
minutes because we can utilize foods that are already almost prepared for us. We could utilize a meal delivery service. Locally, we can find them now. I'm a small business, but also like eat local, support local. Outside of, there are national change that we can use, knowing that Feisty has an international community, you can find one that is supportive for you in your environment. All you would have to do is look up what are meal delivery services near me, where they'll prep them for you. I'm a big fan of utilizing the bulk versions of that. So you can just order a pound of whatever protein, a pound of whatever starch, veggie, and then you can portion them yourself, and that's done.
Yep.
So again, if that's delivered to you, you don't even have to cook it. You just have to portion it and take it out and eat it. If you have the time and meal prep is something you want to do, we can take an hour. It could be crock pot. We're in the winter right now in Minnesota,
Yes.
Michigan. We could throw some things in a crock pot instead of
all for the slow cooker.
Yes.
And yep.
And instead of making, enough just for one meal, why not make a big pot that would maybe get you, and again, your family or the people you care for, 3 servings, and you could freeze the other 2. So, you cook once, you eat twice. Those can be really helpful strategies, but taking the time to plan is very undervalued, I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. One question I want to go back on, because I didn't explicitly ask, and I'm sure some folks are wondering, any nutritional considerations for folks who are breastfeeding?
Yes. Although not necessarily different. So
Okay.
when we think about breastfeeding, I want you to know that it is energy demanding. Postpartum, particularly when you are breastfeeding, is more energy demanding than pregnancy. And we know that
says a lot.
Yeah. If you were to look at, if you were to look it up in the literature, you'll see, to put a number to it, you'll see 400 to 500 calories extra a day. I call BS on that. I have people that, again, especially when we're talking about active populations, people with lean body mass, higher metabolic rates, higher energy demands, we're looking more at 700 plus extra calories a day just for breast milk production, because your body is very efficient. Again, we got a lot of muscle, like we're utilizing energy quickly.
While your body is still healing
Correct.
from giving birth, right? So, I mean, that's also something to note.
Yes. And so when we think about the hierarchy of needs postpartum, and to be clear, postpartum is forever, but there's different layers to it, right? So you think about those first 40 days, which are critical in terms of, that physical, just your body settling and recovering. And that's going to vary if you had a vaginal birth, if you have a vaginal birth with any sort of tearing, or if you had a cesarean, which is a full-blown surgery to your abdomen. So on top of that, then we're asking ourselves to continue to support this young human or humans with our body. And then thereafter, we're looking to get back into training. And so it's a lot. It's a lot.
While sleep deprived.
Correct.
Right. Like, so and then the world of like, don't get too much sleep debt. And there's a lot of anxiety about that right now. So it's,
That's a tall task.
I know we'll talk more about this. The demands or expectations on us are mind-boggling.
It's ridiculous.
I do a lot of unpacking and rebuilding prior to pregnancy with my athletes to be like, what are your expectations? What is negotiable? What's not negotiable? And in the same breath, we're going to let all of it go because pregnancy is totally unpredictable. Birth is totally unpredictable. And there's a lot of meeting your body and yourself exactly where you are. And you have to be able to do that. Otherwise, it's going to get hard really fast because, and again, you can plan and prepare where you are, but in that part, that it's such a unique season of life, especially for active females and athletes who are used to their rhythm, routine. I've got this where it is disruptive.
Doing it all, getting it all done.
Yeah. But coming back to the nutrition specifically, so there's a couple nutrients that just become more important, as I would say. I think sometimes the way that it's sold to us is you need this very special vitamin, right? That has all of these things. But these are all nutrients, especially female athletes.
This proprietary blend.
Yeah. No proprietary blends. We don't want them. We don't want them. Keep them away. Keep them away. Hey, none of that.
It's our cure-all, and we're not going to tell you what's in it because you don't want to know.
No. Quick side, and I will come back, but I've been doing some consulting on the development of some postpartum vitamin and mineral supplements, which has been a lot of fun. But it's been really interesting to get more involved in that world and understand for your prenatal and vitamins in general, there's not a standard amount of nutrients you need to have. So every company that has a prenatal or a postnatal decides we are committing. This is what we're committing to. We're committing to.
This is what women need.
Yes. Wild. And And NDA. So I can't say,
moms to be or parents to be who want to do it the right way are going to get the supplements because they want to make sure that they.
Correct. Yeah. And you're putting your hands in this company's, the trust and saying basically, I'm trusting what you're telling me. And, the organization that I am working with, we're one of many, and there might be two other ones that have consulted with dietitians to actually put this together. So mind-boggling to me that many of the things that exist have actually not been validated by someone with my expertise. We won't go down that path, but just so you know, informed decision making.
That's a different podcast for another. Another episode.
Yeah, we could do a whole supplement discussion.
Just all the marketing hacks and a doctor recommended. Like which doctor who, and do they still have their license?
Oh man,
there's so many.
Yes.
So okay. So then
we'll come back
postnatal.
Yes. So vitamin mineral supplementation for breastfeeding athletes in particular.
Okay.
We want to pay attention to vitamin D. I would absolutely consider supplementing with vitamin D. It's hard to get through your diet unless you're regularly consuming copious amounts of egg yolks and organ meat, maybe some sardines on the regular. It's going to be really hard to keep that up just via your diet. And it's an inexpensive supplement for us to utilize. And I'm very comfortable saying like between 2,000 and 5,000 I use a day would be fine. I would err on the 5,000 IU category, even if you live somewhere in the sun, because most people who spend time in the sun are wearing suntan lotion, and that's going to inhibit the absorption of vitamin D. So vitamin D is a big one. A nutrient that you can pay attention to via your diet, which a lot of people actually end up craving during this time, which is interesting, is dairy because of calcium. Sure. So, if you're someone who doesn't consume dairy for any reason, we can definitely get calcium through vegetables, through leafy greens, broccoli, things like this, or, the plant-based version, almond milk is very high in calcium. So we want to pay attention to calcium, vitamin D, and calcium support our bone density. One of the things that ends up happening through pregnancy and into postpartum, particularly during breastfeeding, is your bone density actually takes a hit. So our bone density drops. And then if we are, here's the catch though, if you're supporting the needs of your body, it rebounds back. If you find yourself in a state of low energy availability and REDS as you head into postpartum and return to sport, as many people do, this is when we end up seeing stress fractures, injuries and lack of recovery.
Yep.
And so it's not going to
Interesting.
bounce back in that way
Right.
if you're not supporting your body. So that's really
Right.
important, especially when so many of us are giving birth in that later 30s, heading into perimenopause phase, where in general, we're going to be needing to pay attention to our bone density. So those
Right.
would be big ones. Iron is another important nutrient to pay attention to. And everybody notice I'm talking about
Yeah.
micronutrients. I'm not talking about protein.
Right.
And, I feel like I've driven that one home. Like, eat your carbs,
Carbs.
eat your protein, but we're talking about the micros. So
Yeah.
iron is another one. Your blood volume doubles in pregnancy, which means we need more iron. In postpartum, a lot of bleeding is going to happen when you give birth to that baby.
Mm-hmm.
Postpartum itself, especially with those vaginal deliveries, there's a lot of bleeding. That lochia that kind of comes out as you're healing from having also, pushed out a nice squishy placenta. So we want to pay attention to food that contains iron. Again, that's kind of like your meat, red meat components. I cannot emphasize organ meat enough as, like, even if it's once a week, you can blend in some liver, kidney, heart, even into like a ground meat. So if you're having meatballs or tacos or some sort of bolognese, you will not taste it. A chili, especially in those first 40 days, when possible, like those warm, easy to digest, soupy, stewy foods are valuable. But I say that with a love note, because if you're giving birth in the middle of August, I understand if that's not what you want to eat. Like, please just
ground
eat.
liver may not be on your
correct.
your menu.
But this is where social media gets people, because it's like, God forbid we don't eat that way. You're doing it wrong, and
a horrible mother,
and that's just not fair. It's not fair, and there's many roads. And again, I think there's what is like idealized and would be amazing.
Yes.
Someone could make me a meal and just like bring it to me in bed, and I could eat and nurse my baby. Sure. But that's not most of us.
No.
So let's keep it realistic.
Yeah.
And please don't feel like because someone else is doing it that way, you have to do it that way.
Right. Yeah, let's get into that, because that is a whole thing.
Sure.
But, because you've mentioned wanting to change the narrative surrounding what it means to navigate life as a woman, an athlete, and a mother.
This is true.
Right. So these are three huge. And then there's also careers.
Yeah.
Which is like a fourth. And, so how, like, one, what is the current narrative? For those, we know, but we don't know.
You've got my tagline.
And then what do you want it to be? Right.
Oh my gosh. The current narrative is push through, shrink yourself, delay your life, and be grateful that you get to compete. That's the narrative. And how, I don't understand how we got there. It's really heartbreaking for me, especially when I talk to ex-professional athletes who stopped competing when they started having kids, because there was no other option. There was no support. There was no discussion. And now we're just...
It's like, okay, you're done now.
Correct.
Just like, you made that decision.
Correct.
Right? It just,
And we're just starting to scratch the surface, because we have more professional athletes across spectrum, but especially if we look at, Feisty looking at endurance sports, if we're looking at some of these ultra runners, triathletes, like they're coming back. And then having more and we're like, yes, and cheering them on. And I'm there in that corner.
Breastfeeding during races.
Yes.
Which also you don't have to do. Like, works pretty cool, right? And if it's not your thing, cool.
Yes.
Right? Like, you do you. And I think that's also kind of what that narrative gets, is like, there's one right way to do it. And if you're not doing it that one way, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. And the beauty of, and listen, personal share, my son will be 4.5 in March. He still occasionally tandem feeds. She'll be 9 months next week. He would never stop, ever. Like, he would, we're consciously, my baby's going to celebrate her first birthday, and I'm going to get him a cake with boobies on it, and that will be it, because he won't stop. He won't stop. So I, like, viscerally in my body know the cost of breastfeeding for like a long period of time through a pregnancy.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. And what I will tell you is, having supported many different decisions, I've supported athletes who have exclusively breastfed, who have combo fed, who have chosen not to breastfeed right away, who've breastfed for years, a year, there is no right way to do it. There is taking care of yourself, taking care of your mental health, and nourishing your child. And so, even coming into, having shared, like, that's the current narrative for us. What I want it to be, I want it to be that, a fueled athlete is a fast athlete, being nourished is optimizing performance, utilizing our menstrual cycles as a data point, getting curious, understanding what is normal for you so that you can better advocate for yourself and the team around you can support in that advocacy. Understanding that motherhood is not the end of athleticism. There are plenty of examples in which we have seen female athletes come back faster, stronger, more resilient after motherhood. So we're blowing that out of the water. And your health is not the opposite of ambition. And you need to be in a strong, resilient, healthy body, which is going to look and feel unique to you in different seasons of life for you to perform your best. Because ultimately, we don't have to choose between being athletes and being mothers, because we can be both. We can be both. We can nourish and support these different sides to us, these different identities that we hold true. And all of that will help us be better mothers and help us be better athletes if we can be seen as the whole human being that we are. So that's
exactly
what I am, fighting and advocating and really working with so many people on in different avenues, and like what a gift it is to be a part of
absolutely.
that.
And I mean, I think of it from, psychological standpoint, we talk a lot about athletic identity. Right. And we know that athletic identity it's really great in a lot of ways, but it can also be an Achilles heel, because if it's too big, especially post-collegiate athletes, professional athletes, and then they get injured, they retire unexpectedly, it's really hard. And so you have to have multiple facets of your identity in order to be psychologically well. And so there's no better way to do that than to be, a mother and an athlete and a woman and an entrepreneur, to like navigate all of those things in a way that works for you. Right. So it's tricky, because I think in the world that we live in, it's just this, do it all. And then sacrifice your well-being or the little things along the way, you'll be fine. But it's like at what cost?
Exactly. And I can't, I think, underplay the importance of like building a team around you. So, even being conscious of resources. So especially when we talk about motherhood and return to sport, like, are you working with a pelvic health provider? If you're an elite, is that part of your contract? Is that part of your sponsor? So, shout out to For All Mothers, formerly And Mother. I've done quite a bit of work with them. They are bringing lactation support. They are bringing childcare to racing. I have contributed to, there's some playbooks that are coming out that are for the athletes themselves and for the sponsors that include kind of the different multidisciplinary support. I have worked with athletes on getting their nutrition support into their contract through fertility, because we're talking about pregnancy. We, again, probably a separate conversation for us to talk about fertility issues in elite sport in particular. Undiscussed, unsupported. Again, you think about pregnancy loss and some of these pieces, and there's no time off for that. So there's a lot that needs to be done to allow for us to thrive. I mean, even childcare before this, again, I am not an elite. I'm here in support, but my athleticism is, and my exercise is very like important for me. And so I put a lot of resources into making sure I have that childcare so I can go do that. But if you don't have access to it, if you don't have the resources for it, how can you train to be able to do what you need to do? So it's multifaceted, where the support needs to happen for us to be able to do and perform the way that we are expected to, if you will.
Right. When you think about, I mean, the athletes you've worked with, the folks the women, in your circle or network, the ones who have been quote unquote most successful, right? And we'll say successful in terms of sustainable health, thriving, flourishing, leaning into multiple aspects of their identity. What are they doing that's working well for them? eating carbs.
Not skipping on the carbs. Yes. Keeping snacks
Yep.
in their pockets.
Yes.
It's actually investing in like in the support piece. So I would say,
Yes.
sitting down, if you're solo, kind of like what do I need? What's my priorities in terms of support? So instead of investing in stuff, especially again, like leaning into motherhood, instead of investing in stuff, the specific stroller, the specific bassinet, the cute
Right.
clothes, like invest in care for yourself.
Yes.
Postpartum care, nutrition
Yeah.
support. So you are nourished, pelvic health support. So you can physically move the way you need to move. I have all of my talk about success and longevity in sport.
Yeah.
I have all of my athletes and active people in pregnancy start and get established with a pelvic health provider. And for those athletes that don't have someone tangible because they live in parts of the country, or again, some of my expats or people who are outside the States who aren't in a location where they can physically get to someone, we have them do it virtually. There's even some different programs. Celeste Gorman, who is actually not a pelvic health provider, but she's a strength coach through pregnancy. She works a lot with like USA Track and Fields. So she has a lot of strength training programs. There's a lot you can do to prepare your body for birth that will also help you get set up right away to start that recovery process and get you moving well. But I love for people to get some hands on them in pregnancy, because then if you start compensating because now your center of gravity has changed, you're going to know right away. And we can, you can have someone physically help you adjust that. That is life-changing. So that physical care, the physical nourishment of your body, I need to include you in this mix, the mental health component of this. So, if you're someone who has a history in particular of any sort of, depression, mental health, anxiety, concern, it is likely, not definite, but it is likely that might show face in pregnancy, if not postpartum. I would say, especially if you're going to be alone a lot of the time, it can be a very isolating.
That's exactly, if it's not even due to, the physiological or hormonal changes, it can be due to the isolation, the sleep deprivation, the societal and cultural expectations of how you're supposed to be showing up, and then feeling like you're failing, right? Like that hits you like a 2x4. That makes sense.
Or just, the paralyzing anxiety that people experience where the baby is crying and they feel like they can't put the baby down, or they can't put the baby down so they can't get themselves something to eat. Right. And so now we're into feeling, not because of restriction and the need to bounce back, which is its own unique piece of BS, but because you're so scared to let this baby down so that you can get yourself something, and no one's there to take care of you. And so investing in the resources that allow you to take care of yourself are invaluable. And that's the difference maker between people who have success and longevity, especially in this window, and ones who don't.
Yeah. I see that from the mental health standpoint in just multiple realms. It's really, especially like, really significant injuries with a long recovery, complex and chronic health concerns, right? The athletes who really thrive are the ones like they've got their people. Yep. They've got their number one draft picks and their roster of healthcare providers, and they may not see all of them all of the time because, it's expensive. It takes a lot of time, money, energy, resources, effort. But like they've got their people and they know when to call them in for duty.
Yes.
Is being like, okay, this has been a week. Like, do you have anything available next week? And asking unapologetically, rather than not wanting to inconvenience someone or this or that. Like, nope, you call them up for duty when needed.
Yep.
Right. And I think it's just knowing your needs, or listening to your body and knowing when something is off and knowing what's normal for you.
Yeah.
And then being like, this isn't normal for me.
Yes. And it doesn't, exactly like you said, it doesn't have to be, I meet with this person twice a month or once a week, or especially that's where the pre-work I think is really invaluable and underrated. That's the word I was looking for. It's underrated because, going back to kind of planning and being able to surrender and respond, we can do a lot of pre-work in terms of your nourishment, right? Like we can stock your freezer.
Yes.
We can set up a meal train. Yeah. We can have this meal service. Yeah. We can do a lot of pre-work in terms of your mental health. We can know where your narratives are. We can know your perceived anxieties. We can set up like almost markers for like when you need help, here it is. If it's a person to go to, if it is your provider that you need to set up a session with, there's so much that can be done beforehand. And it, not in all cases, because there are definitely unplanned pregnancies within this context, but many times we know that this is what we're working towards. And so it's worth putting in that time to unpack beforehand.
It's an investment in yourself. Yeah. It's so funny. I just, the top of my head, I can think of 3 people in the past like 3 or 4 months who reached out to me unexpectedly saying the sports psychology skills we worked on together, specifically the pain cave and exercise-induced pain for endurance athletes, got them through labor and delivery.
Oh, yeah.
Like those same skills, right? And so it's like you're setting these foundations, like nutrition, PT. It's like you're laying the bricks.
Yep.
And those bricks will pay dividends in the future.
Yep.
And then you can also, call in for backup when needed. So yeah.
Yeah. Like we all, like I can refer to you, you can refer, like we have our own piece of like people you can go to know like, okay, you now need this. Or I've had I work very close with mental health and pelvic health providers where sometimes if we know someone, it's, we're being thoughtful about resources. It's like, okay, I'm going to take a pause because they really need you right now. They're set up to do these things. Can you just check in on them with that? And then it's worth knowing your people building your team. I just can't recommend.
And if you don't know, if you don't have your people, like for listeners, start with one person and then ask.
Yes.
Because, providers like us, we have our people in our network and we'll be like, I know someone, she would be a great fit for you.
Yeah.
And we also like playing matchmaker.
Yes.
And it's easier for us to coordinate care and then you get better care as a result and then everyone wins.
100%.
Yeah.
I always say there was a point in time where I thought I would work or like build a multidisciplinary practice. And then I realized very quickly that that's not what I wanted to do because I like working with different people and support of different people because I'm not for everybody. Yeah. You're not, like you want to be able to exactly match make your providers. But I find I function as a primary care provider a lot in that way where once upon a time, that's who you would go to get referrals. And now it's like, oh no, let's just connect you with this person for this specific thing.
Totally.
Yeah.
So cool. Anything as we wrap up, this is amazing. We're going to have to do a round 2, 3, 4, 5. Anything that we haven't addressed that you want to share? Any final tips, pointers, words of wisdom, recommendations for our listeners?
I think I'm wondering if we touch on the kind of like research side that you flagged before, because I think it's important.
Yeah.
And again, in terms of the like potential misinformation or I think over exaggeration maybe of what's going on. We're in a time where I'm happy to see that there are more researchers kind of sharing information, like actual PhD researchers, experts in that field who are studying things, sharing information. However, I think there are some people that are playing this game of shame. It'll let me repost and basically bash like this person for saying this. And again, I don't think that's super helpful for any of us. I think the perspective needs to be, we know what we know now and we're continuing to evolve, and it's okay for all of us to have an evolving recommendation based on what we know and what the literature says and what the science says.
Yes.
And I think when we think about research on female athletes as compared to male athletes and their lack of, we are both aware that there's limited research done on female athletes in particular. And, if we think about why that is harmful for us, the biggest piece of it is when we use predominantly males for sports performance research, because that's what we're talking about. We're looking at stable hormones because they don't have a menstrual cycles. They don't have this sort of fluctuation that we do. And because of that, it's essentially a linear recovery curve. When we think about female athletes, women in general, and what it will look like as we continue to, because it's starting to happen, it's going to be slow. And, for everybody listening, it's going to be slow because it's actually really hard to study females, and let alone female
Mhm.
athletes. You know, again,
Mhm.
having referenced the
Mhm.
cycle and anywhere normal
Mhm.
from 21 to 35 days, it's really hard. So a
Mhm.
lot of the studies that are happening right now, some of them
Yeah.
are Q&A based, they're retroactive, they're or
Yeah.
getting people to come into the lab. You're kind of getting varying um, cycles going on, and really what we're looking to learn is how might your body respond to different hormonal states, because again, at the end
Right.
of the day, I'm not sure that we're ever going to have a clear recommendation where it's like, you need to eat this in your
Right.
follicular phase, you need to eat this in your luteal phase, because there's enough variability if you talk to people and you get to know different people's bodies, that we have to make decisions based on your body. So, which is where that
Mhm.
cycle sinking teeth needs to be let go, and it's kind of unsupportive for us.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
you know, it's important to understand that female physiology is cyclic because of our cycle. We are highly sensitive to energy availability. That's one of the biggest differences.
Yes.
So, you know, as a male, you have a lower threshold for when your body would start to break down, basically, compared to us. Our
Mhm.
threshold isn't that low. It's actually pretty high, because, like it or not, we are designed to hold life inside of us, and that
Yes.
reproductive component of our body is why the bar is so high. And so, because we're
Yep.
highly sensitive to energy availability, um, you know, the way in which our body responds to performance at different states can be masked if we kind of if we're using
Yeah.
male models, um,
Yeah.
because our body is protective of reproduction first. So, you know,
Yeah.
in terms of our experience as female athletes, you know, again, we have a faster hormonal suppression in states of low energy
Mhm.
availability. This is what we're seeing. This is what we know. Different
Mhm.
substrate utilization across the cycle. So that's when we talk about
Mhm.
substrate utilization, that talks about how we hydrate. Again, how we might utilize
Yeah.
carbohydrates or fat as fuel. There looks like,
Mhm.
again, there seems to be some variability, but again, it's variable person to person. So it's
Right.
not clear
Yes.
yet.
Right.
The bone and endocrine consequences, again, that happens
Mhm.
sooner than it would for men. So like these are things we need to
Yeah.
continue to look at, because in a male model, it just doesn't help us, because we're going to miss the mark. Um,
Right.
so we'll miss basically.
That makes, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I really appreciate your point about, willing to, this is something I'm really big on, being willing to learn and unlearn,
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing and owning that that's a part of the scientific research process. Like it makes sense that we're going to be incorrect. We're going to come to some incorrect conclusions here and there. And then we get more information, and then we're like, oh, actually, this doesn't make sense
Yeah.
anymore. Let's revisit it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, yeah, the whole kind of shaming culture, or just being like, no, this is the one way
Correct.
because this is what's worked for me. No, there isn't one right way. There isn't one way, because every woman's cycle is going to be different. Everyone's body and everyone's needs are going to be different, let alone her demands, whether it's for training or life. So,
And to be
yeah.
honest, like honestly, Erin, I feel like if you are supporting individual human beings in their bodies, I personally have a really hard time with like protocols, because, and
Yes.
you know, and I've worked with teams and I've worked with organizations, and it's really hard to do, because you have to have enough room for a check and balance within your athlete. Because
Right.
if you're assessing an individual athlete and supporting them in making the decisions in their body based on how they're performing, how they're recovering, it's going to
Mhm.
be hard to mess that up. So
Right.
even when we're unlearning and relearning, if you're responding to the needs of someone's body specifically, you won't do hard. If you're
Right.
pre-programming and just taking them through this 10-step process, that's where something's going to happen. That's where something's
Yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Yeah. Mel, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us.
yeah, thanks for having me.
What is the best way for folks who are now a part of the Mel Sulaver fan club for them to follow you, get a hold of you, just stay in the know with your latest and greatest?
Yes, please. Well, my social media, I am at Nutrition by Mel. You can find me at nutritionbymel.com, Mel at Nutrition by Mel. If you put Nutrition by Mel in there, you're going to find me. That is the way.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. We will add all of that to the show notes as well, so folks can easily track you down and find you. Really appreciate you sharing all of this wisdom. Have a good one. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Oof, that was such a fun conversation with Mel Sulaver about what true menstrual health and reproductive health looks like for active women and female athletes. If there's one thing I hope you're able to take away, it's that your cycle is so much more than a monthly inconvenience. It's a really important indicator of your overall health and your energy balance. Remember these few things. First, normal is individual to your body. So pay attention to your personal patterns rather than comparing them to other people or textbook standards. Second, carbs aren't optional for female athletes. They're really important for hormonal health and performance. And finally, that tired narrative that women must choose between athleticism and motherhood, it's time we officially say goodbye. This week, I challenge you to get curious about one aspect of your hormonal health, whether that's tracking cycle patterns, noticing energy fluctuations during training, or simply reconsidering your fueling standards. Small awareness shifts create really powerful results over time when we start to pay attention and notice. If you found value in today's conversation, follow Mel at Nutrition by Mel on social media and consider leaving us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Until next time, remember that a fueled athlete is a fast athlete. I'm Dr. Erin Ayala, and you've been listening to the Feisty Women's Performance Podcast. Until next week. Thanks for tuning in to the Feisty Women's Performance Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, review, and share. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not establish a therapeutic relationship. In other words, I'm a licensed psychologist, but not your licensed psychologist. Always consult your healthcare provider before making important decisions about your health. Find show notes and resources at feisty.co. Join us next time as we continue to move the needle in women's health and performance via evidence-based conversations. Until then, keep living your healthiest, feistiest, active life.